Ladies and gentlemen, my special guests on today's Drip Drop podcast are my insecurities. How do you deal with guys like this? How do you deal with these kinds of voices? Guys, I hear you. I want a donut. I know that you're trying to send me a message, and that the message is you think I'm in danger and I'm going to die. I'm not going to die. I'm actually okay. I'm not being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, even though you're making me feel like I am. And I see you, and I got this. I'm just doing a show. That's all that's happening right now. I will take you with me. I want a donut. But I'm just doing a show, and I promise I will get you a donut. For God's sakes. For God's sakes, man. Welcome, everybody, to the Drip Drop podcast. I'm your host, Ed Crasnick. And this is the world's first mental fitness variety show. We are a family podcast. We have conversations with comedians, entertainers, coaching with life experts, and comedy. That's right. It's all about the life skills you wish you knew as a kid. And because my childhood is a blur, it fits like a glove. It's a growth mindset that we have here on the show. And as the great Dr. Seuss used to say, because those who matter don't mind, and those who mind don't matter. Thank you, Doctor. We always hear about what's wrong with the world. What about what's right with the world? Did you know that there are amazing things, amazing stories, people solving problems, solutions-oriented news from all around the world? And we're going to have it courtesy of our friends at the Squirrel News app. It's the Squirrel News app. This is where these stories come from all over the world. Let's read some of them. Let's go to a graphic and maybe some news theme music. Students across Illinois will be able to take up to 5 excused mental health days starting in January. This is a bill signed into law. They will not be required to provide the school with a doctor's note. Students will have more of an opportunity to get the care they need. I'm really excited for this. I think it will help students, parents, and teachers and can help them understand what's going on in their students' lives. Once a student requests a second mental health day, a school counselor will reach out to their family and the student may be referred to get professional help according to the bill. That's what's right with this picture. And here's another. This is an amazing story. It's called the Confess Project, and it means that across 25 states in the United States, barbers are being trained to be mental health coaches. This is actually happening, and it's very successful. And I love where it came from. It started with a gentleman named Lorenzo Lewis, and when he was a kid in his aunt's beauty salon, he went there every day as a child and realized that there was a powerful place there in a beauty shop connecting with a barbershop and how people's lives could be changed through a conversation and support. So, in all these communities across the country are being helped by barbers who are now mental health coaches. Now that is brilliant. Find out more at squirrel-news.net, squirrel-news.net. On today's Drip Drop podcast, all about balance, balancing your emotions. What does it mean? The world is out of balance. Our special guest is an author, an athlete, a mental health advocate, and a speaker. And he will cross the Great Lakes this summer on a paddleboard. The Unbalanced Paddleboarder, our guest, is Mike Shoreman. Take a look.
Mike Shoreman.
Mike Shoreman.
Mike Shoreman.
Author, speaker, and athlete, Mike Shoreman.
The doctor said that I would never paddleboard again.
And it was, months, a year of reprogramming my brain ways to walk.
He's retrained his brain to walk and paddleboard again.
Now I'm on the other side of it and I have the opportunity and the platform to help other people. I felt very alone in my mental health journey. I don't want kids to feel that way.
This track is in support of Jack.org, a Canadian charity focused on supporting youth mental health.
The mental health side of the healthcare system is not really built out and as well funded and as accessible as the physical health side of healthcare, and we're just trying to do our best.
Vicky Keith swam the Great Lakes and she conquered it. It means that there's work to do and that we're going to come back stronger and we're going to shut it down.
So this is great. I'm excited to have on the show kind of a national hero in Canada. No, he shakes his head. No, it's a humble guy. But really, crossing the Great Lakes is a big thing. We're going to talk about it all with Mike Shoreman, who was called the Unbalanced Paddleboarder, and was a very, very fine paddleboarder. And through Ramsay Hunt Syndrome, which is a neurological condition, was knocked off his feet, knocked off balance, whole life changed. And then he had to learn all these skills again to get back up on the board. And now writes books, speaks, mental health advocate, award winner. So all of these things have happened that have changed your life, but you've changed your life. Tell us how a guy goes from not being able to balance and even stand up or even sit on a paddleboard to crossing the Great Lakes. How's that going to occur?
So thanks for having me today. It's a pleasure to be hanging out.
Pleasure. Good to have you.
Yeah, no. When I lost my mobility in 2018, it was mentally and physically grueling. And it took about a year of going through vestibular rehab therapy, reprogramming my brain, in rehab with specialists, learning how to walk, and just in a straight line. I often stagger when I walk, like a drum fan, but I think it adds character. And they said, you'll never paddleboard again. And as a paddleboarding coach who had a business, I taught lessons and did coaching and rentals, and overnight my business was gone. And so my business, my independence, my social life. So as you can imagine, mentally that was really difficult to cope with. But I was given the opportunity. 7 months later, I had just stopped using a cane to walk at that point. And I was at an event with paddleboards. And when everybody had left, a few of my friends said, why don't you just try for 3 minutes, sitting down. You don't even have to stand up. And I did that day. And part of my condition is vertigo and dizziness. Even now, when I turn my head side to side or up and down, I get very dizzy. I was spinning out in bathtubs, just washing my hair. So it was very scary. But I said yes, and they were next to me, and I felt like I could do it. And the sun came out, and it was a beautiful experience. And I think because it was such a good experience, it knocked me on my butt for days. Like I was on the couch for a solid day after 3 minutes of being on water. But it gave me the confidence to go back out and do it again. And about a week or so later, I was out there and I tried for 5. And it was just incremental kind of wind building. And 3 minutes turned to 5, turned into 7. And then that was in May. And by July, I stood up on a paddleboard for the first time. And I lasted a few minutes. And it just kept on building and building and building until last summer when we did the crossing of Lake Ontario. And I paddleboarded 73 kilometers. And here we are.
And here we are at the, well, there's, one of the things that I'm thinking of, there's a bunch of things that I want to ask you, but one of the things that I'm thinking is what a great name Shoreman is for somebody who does what you do. I can't think of a better name. You were destined with that name to do this. When I go to see a doctor, I want a doctor with a name like a Dr. got a lot of Sleepovich. I want a doctor. I want the name to fit what the person is doing. And in the old days, that's what it used to be, right? Goldberg was a goldsmith. So I does anybody ever talk to you about that? Anybody ever mention that?
Yeah. I went out. I went out for a walk last weekend actually with a guy, and we were talking, and he messaged me afterwards, and it was a first time meeting, and we were talking about work stuff, and he messaged me afterwards, and he said, "I just have to ask you, is that your real name, or is that?" I said, "Yeah, it's my real name."
Yeah.
But no, it was really funny. Like, I find journalists, I've had a lot of media coverage, and the headlines last year was he's faced a bigger foe than Lake Ontario. So I'm more like with this, I know that it's going to get attention, which is good because it's for mental health. But I enjoy journalists and their headlines.
The bites, the sound bites. Yeah.
But I haven't heard anybody do a play on words of Shoreman yet. So I'm kind of looking forward to that.
We'll be doing it. I'll try to do it before the show's out, but we'll be doing it. You can be sure of that. What I'm thinking is it more of a challenge? Has it been more challenging to you, the physical aspect of this or the mental aspect of this? And what kind of tricks or skills, or how have you learned to deal with your thinking and your mental health differently since you've had to deal with this?
Yeah. So the most interesting thing was, at first it was very physical. And then the mental crept in and I didn't see it. And I think when a person goes from being able-bodied to being immobilized or having any significant physical body change, we're not warned about it by the doctor. They don't say, "Okay, this is coming, heads up." This is, a big life change, and you're going to experience that. So, over time, I wasn't expecting, like, it wasn't just losing the mobility. All the nerves shattered in my face. It looks like I'd had a stroke. I remember the first time that I posted a photo. It was around this time, and it happened in early November. So about 2 months, and I shared a photo on Instagram for the first time, and I lost 5,000 followers. And it was just shocking, and there was a lot of grief, and anger and sadness. I wanted to do. I was misdiagnosed. I went to several hospitals, and fortunately, my father is a medical litigator. So we had that kind of set up right off the bat.
Wow.
And I was very angry. And there was a lot of grief and rage. And over time, that just spiraled until April of that year, April 2019, right about a month before I got on the paddleboard. And I ended up in a crisis center, because my parents said, "You're not coping. You're not handling, like, it's self-destructive what you're doing, and you're heading for a breakdown." And I remember that day being dropped off. I felt like I was like Girl Interrupted. I was like Boy Interrupted, like Winona Ryder.
Yeah.
Like, I was getting dropped off at the door. I had to go in. It was really scary. But when I got inside, it was scary. And it was at that time that I started taking it seriously and acknowledging, that there was work to do. and then the work happened. But it took a long time to realize. But then as the mental health got better, so did the physical health. I found that my progression, I came out of there and I was on a paddleboard again within 5 weeks. And then all the wins started building, and it was because everything was kind of coming into alignment.
So it really was the mental health that sort of got you back up on the board.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about self-talk, about because I noticed in some of your speeches, you're a speaker, you speak to a lot of groups, you talk about yes, getting a lot of yeses. So how does somebody learn to kind of shift that thing where your head says no all the time, and now you're actually consciously making a choice? You're saying, well, I could say no, but I'm going to say yes.
So I think the yeses, the I said yes thing, is about saying yes to yourself when you don't think you can do something and challenging yourself. Um, I I challenged myself that day where they said, do you want to get back on board? And I said yes to opportunity when it came. And I felt comfortable because it was a realistic goal. I could get on a board just slightly offshore for 3 minutes, for 2 or 3 minutes, and I would have safety. I had the safety net beside me, and I had the power and the confidence to do that because I realized in that moment that I can do hard things because I just came out of a crisis center. So I was like, if I can handle that, I can handle 2 minutes sitting down, even though I know it's going to make me feel sick. Um, and then the invitation came a couple weeks later to get back on a board. So I said yes again. And then, a couple weeks later again, and then I was standing up. And then I got an invite to speak at North America's largest inspirational speech competition. And I thought, okay, well, I can get on a board. I can do this. So it just kept on building and building. So when I talk about saying yes to ourselves, it's building those incremental wins and challenging what we think we are capable of, because we're capable of so much more than we think we are. We just have to take notice of what has happened, and apply it to the present situation.
Well, the world is out of balance. The entire world is everybody's out of balance. The entire world.
We're all in balance, probably.
Yes.
You've all ruined my brain.
So this is a daily thing. This is a moment-to-moment thing. This is not, and you're saying yes to yourself. You're being conscious. You're making choices. And what happens when you feel depressed? What happens when you don't feel like this? What do you do now differently than you didn't do before all of this happened?
So it was really funny. Last night I had a really bad sleep, and it's funny. I often talk about the good things. I sometimes talk about the bad things, the tough things. But this morning I shared on social media that I did have a hard night last night. I was up all night. I think I've had about 3 hours of sleep today. I was sick in the middle of the night, and today my walking is harder than most. And I wrote in it that in this post that I made that not every day is a great day. There are still problems. Still, I'm a person with a disability. This isn't going to go away. I've sort of plateaued at this point, and it's hard because I am ambitious, I am driven, and it's hard to be stuck in my tracks and not feeling like it. So I did feel very down about it this morning, and then I just kind of snapped out of it quickly, um, by realizing that not every day has to be a great day. That's not realistic. Nobody has great days all the time. Um, do I have a house? Am I warm? Do I have food? Um, Practicing gratitude, really, you know, what has happened in my life has shown me to be extremely grateful. Um, I put out a call with that speech. It went viral, and people came. Messages from people all around the world. I got a beautiful message from a woman in Holland on the weekend. Um, so it just practicing gratitude for what I do have makes the hard days so much easier.
Yeah, that's a big solution for, and it really is something that anybody can do. It's accessible to you, and the mind says no, and then you say, well, wait a minute, what's right with this picture? What do I have? The world, the media, a lot of what we have to deal with is about what's not right and about what's not working and problem based. Here's a problem, and then you become addicted to it. It's very easy to become addicted to bad news. And
it's everywhere.
And it's everywhere. Yeah.
What I'm encouraged to do is actually not. It actually sticks and lands up here if you write it out. Because when you're taking your thoughts and you're putting it like pen to paper, you're making something real, something tangible, and it registers. It registers with me better. So if anybody's thinking of taking up, gratitude journaling or any of that kind of stuff, I highly recommend putting your thoughts down on paper and writing down a list.
And I find that everybody needs a mantra, some kind of little, even if it's as simple as "I'm enough." It's a mantra. It's something you can go to right in the moment when you don't have anything else. You just go to it, and it's like whatever yours is, that's what yours is. But I feel like externalizing it, getting it out, even talking. We used to think that when people talk to themselves, they weren't well. Now I think when people talk to themselves, they actually are well. That's what makes a person well is, what's going on with me right now? You can say it under your breath. You can say it to yourself. Check in, check in. Paddles up. What is it? What does it mean? And what is this movement, this paddles up?
It was so funny. I didn't realize what I was doing when I said it. So paddles up was actually a thing that I used to do with my clients. I'd take them out paddleboarding, and it's funny when you're learning how to paddleboard. For those who are listening, who don't know what paddleboarding is, it's basically you're on a surfboard with a paddle, and you're moving, and there were a lot of people who were really nervous and intimidated by being on the water, by falling. I'd always get the question, "Am I going to fall?" And I thought, "Well, yeah, yeah, you are." and really often they wouldn't, but I would say that so that they were prepared. And people have the most stability when they are on a board on the water when they have their paddle in the water. So they're all learning to get up and paddling, and by the end of my time with them, I would line them up in front of the Toronto skyline. I don't know if you've ever been to Toronto, but the skyline is exquisite. It's, the CN Tower, the buildings, they all light up. There are planes landing over the lake in front of us. And we would do it right in front of sunset. So I'd get off my board and I'd stand in the water and I'd take my phone and I'd kind of command them. And I'd say paddles up, and I'd have them hold their paddles like up in the air, like gladiators, and I'd take photos. And I would send them this piece afterwards as kind of, something that they could have. And I would edit them so that they were stunning, like in front of the sunset. And they would frame them like it was beautiful. So when I did the speech, I ended my speech with paddles up. And it was, for me, it means, getting your power, getting your confidence in something, going from one place to another that is completely different. These people started being really nervous and anxious, and by the end of it, they were warriors. And in my speech that I gave, I wasn't that person. And by the time I gave that speech, I had my paddles up. So it was kind of sending a message out to other people to raise their paddles.
It's a great image. It's a great image. That's all the time we have for now. Thank you for joining us for part 1 of my interview with paddleboarding expert and mental health enthusiast Mike Shoreman. We'll see you soon for part 2. The Drip Drop podcast, brought to you by the Drip Drop app. Now, I want to tell you about the Drip Drop app. It's an incredible win-win app. It's the mental fitness app for Gen Z. The Drip Drop app is a place where kids can learn amazing life skills and life upgrades from experts all over the world and get rewarded for doing so. It's a whole community. It's a whole world. Join us. And I want to thank everybody on the show for helping us put this together. Thank you to Monty at HQ. Thank you to Sarah Jezik. And a special thank you always to my good friend, Jason Brown. That's our show for this week. Remember, no matter how broken we think we are, it's just feelings and thoughts. We're all okay. Keep coming back. It works if you work it. I'm Ed Crasnick. We'll see you next week on the Drip Drop podcast.